Well, the National Parks Arts Foundation is this amazing nonprofit organization that puts artists in a national park unit for a full month where they get to create. And we're not talking about any park. We're talking places like Hawai'i Volcanoes, Gettysburg National Military Park, Chaco Culture National Historical Park. These Loggerhead, it's an island in the Dry Tortugas where you get to spend a month on an island. I mean, seriously, amazing, amazing opportunities for artists and artists of all kinds, all mediums, whether you're a dancer, a poet, a musician, a writer, photographer. This is an incredible opportunity. And on today's Big Blend Radio First Friday Arts and Parks show, our two guests are really going to talk about that. We have our June 2019 Hawai'i Volcanoes National Park Artist in Residence is comics journalist Andy Warner. He's a New York Times bestselling author of Brief Histories of Everyday Objects, and his latest book, This Land is My Land. He's a contributing editor at The Nib, and once you get stuck into that, like you're never going to pull out for the rest of the day or night. You've got to check that out. He teaches cartooning at Stanford and also an animation workshop in Denmark. That's going to be super fun, especially nowadays. You know, animation just never goes away. We love it. And his comics have been published in numerous outlets like The Slate, Fusion, American Public Media, you name it. It's all out there. And just go to his website, andywarnercomics.com, and follow him on Twitter. That's fun, too. So it's Twitter, it's Andy Comics. So welcome, Andy. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great. It's great to be here talking with you.
And so this is your last night in Hawaii where you had your awesome residency. Like, are you feeling like, wah, I don't want to go home?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really sad. I mean, I've loved it here. Being here for a whole month has been absolutely incredible. It's our last night on the Big Island, but I'm actually here with my family, my wife, and our twin 2-year-old toddlers. And so after working really hard putting this story together on the residency, we're actually going to take a week, and I'm actually going to take a vacation, and we're going to go to Kauai. So spend a little bit of time on the beaches as long as I'm out here.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear that, your family's with you, too, because that's another unique thing about the National Parks Arts Foundation. Like when we talk about Loggerhead Island, you need to actually have someone with you because it's remote, and so you get to bring friends or family with you, and it's the same thing in Hawai'i Volcanoes, which is very unique. And speaking of the National Parks Arts Foundation, we have the founder here, Tanya Ortega. You've heard her on Big Blend Radio quite a few times over the years, and always excited because you never know where she's going to be. And you can go to her website, nationalparksartsfoundation.org, because there's so many opportunities. And I just want to say this to artists. Sign up for the newsletter, follow them on social media because these opportunities come in and you need to jump on them. And if you don't get it the first time, jump on it again and again. Repeat. Isn't that right, Tanya? And welcome.
Thank you. That's entirely true. You speak the truth. It's,
I speak the truth for now.
You speak the truth. Two things. You got to jump on those opportunities. And number two, you never know where I am. I was wondering if when you ask where I am, if I can just say hammock. Or, beach, like exactly where I am.
Bushes,
I'm in Hawaii now as much as possible.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is. The other places, all the national parks that we go to, those places are beautiful too. But I have to say, during the coldest and the hottest parts of the year, I've become a terrible complainer. So Hawaii's just too good to be, I'm glad to say.
And you've got two residencies there, right, for artists. So you've got Hawai'i Volcanoes. That is such a unique place. And then Haleakala, am I right with that one?
Exactly. And we're going to be posting that one this week. So that's going to go up for this winter. And it's going to be a super, super duper quick opportunity. I mean, I think it might be open for a month or something like that. But, as you know, as soon as these things get approved, we jump on them, even if we have a tiny bit of time to get the funding and the artists to do it, because, better just do it if you're working with the government and not wait around. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we went on air, we had a quick conversation about Nancy and I following in your footsteps, not only in Gallup, New Mexico, so where we visited your family's hotel, the El Rancho. Really amazing Hollywood history, Native American culture. I mean, it's just Gallup is an amazing place, and we got to go to Chaco Culture National Historical Park and Aztec Ruins, both part of a National Parks Arts Foundation Artist in Residency. So it was really amazing.
Cool.
But then we just came back from Santa Fe, and this leads back to you, Andy. We were in Santa Fe, and I mean the art is heavy, and when we first connected with you, Tanya, half the time I talked to you, or even on the radio shows, you were in Santa Fe, and we were talking about the La Posada Hotel, how you and I both, as kids, you ran amok there. I ran amok in a hotel in South Africa as kids.
She finally admitted it.
But my friend that I ran amok with in South Africa is the one who introduced me to comics and Archie and Jughead. And he expected me to be into the girls, but I had a thing about Jughead. But when you look at now Andy Warner's work, like he's taking this to a whole other level. But do people still read Archie and Jughead comics, Andy?
Archie's still around, actually. It's one of the longest lived, continuous comics. It has a really amazing history. I mean, I read it growing up too. We traveled a lot when I was a kid, and always in the airports you could find those little digests, and so they were required plane reading for my siblings and I.
Oh, see, and then we graduate to Mad Magazine.
That's right.
Exactly.
That right. Some of us just start right at Mad Magazine.
Yeah, we loved Mad. That's still going too. I used to have the board game and everything. I love Mad Magazine.
I'm sorry, you guys. I was into Cracked Magazine, not Mad Magazine. So we're going to be at odds there.
Okay, wait. Cracked Magazine? I don't even know what that is.
It was the competitor.
We'll talk about it later.
Pepsi to Mad's Coke.
Yes, thank you, Andy. I'm glad you know.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Wasn't that was that the National Lampoon one? Didn't they do something like that? Or am I totally off in another land?
I don't know who owned it. Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think Cracked was a kind of an independent thing that may have been bought out by National Lampoon. We'll have to consult the experts later on that one, guys.
Yeah.
I know, but
are you saying
you're
crack or craft?
Cracked.
Like a piece of ancient Acoma Pueblo pottery. If you drop it, will be cracked.
Okay. Well done, Tanya, because you know that you didn't want me to explain that one. I'm really
and then if you drop the Cracked magazines, you'll have sherds of Cracked magazine. I'm kidding. I went too far. I went too far with the pottery joke.
No, paper cuts. Andy, the nib. Tell us about that. How long have you been connected with the nib? Because once I'm serious. Like when you start getting in there, you're never going to pull out.
Yeah, they've got a pretty long history behind them. So this is actually their second incarnation, and there was a period when it ceased existing, and then it started existing again, and it's moved owners, et cetera. It's always been it was founded, and it's always been the baby of this editorial cartoonist and nonfiction cartoonist, Matt Bors, who's a good friend of mine. And from the earliest days, I was actually doing work for them. I was contributing these nonfiction comics, these journalism comics, these history and explainer comics. In its first incarnation, I think that must have been, I off the top of my head, I should probably know this, but how long it's been around for. But when it vanished and then came back, that was when I actually got hired as a editor there. So I started out there as a contributor, and then in 2016, it was brought back from the dead, and that was when I started working for them. And I've been a contributing editor there ever since. That means that I both put out my own work on the platform, and I also solicit and edit the work of other cartoonists, which is really amazing because that allows me to hit up these networks that I've developed working in comics for so long, you know, cartoonists from Lebanon, from Egypt, from Southeast Asia, all over the place to try to get their work published, making really cool, interesting nonfiction stuff in front of this big audience that we have.
Wow, nice. This is amazing too. What I wanted to ask you, because when this is, you know, when I was pictured, you know, comics cartoonist, it would be, you know, here we are at our artist table doing it all by hand and everything. And now what's going on with the internet world, and, you know, we've got Photoshop and everything. Has it changed over the last 20 years, and how it goes to virtual press, and how it's outputted from the day when you start sketching it?
Yeah, so it sort of depends on the artist. I actually work entirely digitally myself. I used to work using like a Cintiq, now I use an iPad, but I do all my comics in Photoshop. And I've been that way since about 2007, when I actually had an accident that broke my drawing arm, and so I had to learn how to draw digitally, because you could zoom in super, super far, and I could draw with my left hand, just really agonizingly slow. But then I recovered from that, my arm healed, and I realized that I would miss the undo button terribly. And so after that, it was digital forever for me. But there's plenty of cartoonists still that work using traditional tools, and there's no real, you know, neither side looks down on either side. I wouldn't really know what the percentages are these days. A few years ago, it seemed like it was about half and half, probably a little more digital these days. But, yeah, go on.
I was going to say, that's got to make it, in a way, easy for you to go and hop over to Hawaii and go to the volcanoes.
Totally.
And, so in regards to what you need, you don't need a special table and, you know, all that, you know, not that that's that hard to get. But tell us about that, because...
Yeah, it all fits in my backpack. It's great.
I know.
Awesome.
I have a laptop, I have the iPad, and I have my iPhone that I basically use to record these interviews that I do with people. So I make a couple different forms of nonfiction comics. I do history comics. That's what my two books mainly were, and that's just sort of like these deep research dives. And then I also do these journalism comics that basically involve me going to a place, interviewing people, experts, scientists, you know, people that are involved with this topic that I'm writing about, and taking pictures of them as I do it to try to capture how they talk, their gestures, their movements, and then taking all that back, spending 1 billion hours transcribing everything, spending even more 1 billion hours cutting everything down to size, because with comics you really can't actually include all that much text, so you have to be ruthless with yourself, you know. You log like 4 hours of interviews for a 40 panel comic.
Yeah.
And then I just draw it. So, it's a pretty mobile setup these days, which is really great, because that allows you to go into the field a lot more easily. And
that's what you did in Hawaii, right? It was actually go in and look at what happened after the lava? When you envisioned going out there and interviewing people and following what happened with, you know, the volcano saying, hello, here I am, last year, did anything change? And, I mean, it's got to be like a unique thing going and talking to people that have gone through, you know, here's a volcano that is erupting and carrying on. I know Nancy and I have been through some interesting disasters. I you know, reading your bio too. You know, you're in California. Things happen, but a volcano is a little different.
Absolutely.
Shaky.
No, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I think part of the reason why I got interested in the idea in the first place, and part of my pitch for the project, was you know, firsthand experience with some disasters that. Growing up in California, you know, the fires are always all over the place. Last summer I couldn't take my kids out because of the Paradise Fires. The smoke was in the skies. There was a Painted Cave fire in Santa Barbara, which is one of the places I grew up. Our house was actually really damaged in St. Croix, another place I grew up, by Hurricane Hugo in 1989. But volcanoes, you know, they're a really different event. You know, it really feels like the wrath of a god. It leaves very little trace of human activity in its wake, the lava does, when it goes around. And the idea of these big places, like something the size of a national park that's sort of dependent on the volcano itself, but also so vulnerable to it, how they react in the wake of this enormous event. I mean, I talked to a lot of scientists for this story. A lot of the scientists from the Hawai'i Volcano Observatory were really gracious enough to give me a ton of time. And one of the things I kept returning to was that this is like a 100-year, 200-year event. This eruption had been going on continuously for about 35 years. And then it culminated in this massive thing that, destroyed over 700 homes, displaced 2,000 people, really affected the island's economy because it's so dependent on tourism, really affected the park, all those jobs, all those people. And so, it was really fascinating to be able to go around and to have as much access as I did. Through the people that I met here, I was able to interview Mayor Kim, who's the mayor of the island. I was able to interview these volcanologists, park staff. I was able to drive to the places that were affected by this event and actually witness it firsthand, take pictures to draw from. It was an amazing experience.
Wow. And then when does, because you're going to have these panels right up on the Nib, and everyone goes to the nib.com, and I'm definitely watch your Twitter and also your actual website, andywarnercomics.com. When do we get to see this part of it? Because I've seen little pieces of it, and I'm like, wow, you're really telling that story of. It's amazing how you capture the emotion of it. Yet, like you're saying, that history and science, and then this is what people are going through, but this is what happens. And to me, what you're doing is such an educational tool, especially in history and science. But you've brought in this humanity part of it. You have that emotion in there that makes you think about it. But when will people be able to see this?
So the story itself is, I think, being published on the Nib on Monday, July 1st. So it should be up by the time this airs, and should be findable pretty easily on that webpage or following my personal accounts. But just to speak to that personal aspect, that was a really, really important part of this whole project to me, and maybe what was one of the big drivers of my interest in it in general, is that a lot of disaster journalism, whether it's natural disasters or man-made disasters like wars and things like that, is really obsessed with following the drama of it as it unfolds. And that's a really important part of the story. It's what gets the eyeballs. It's what gets people to care. And it makes for good TV or good internet or good whatever, right? You have lava flowing. You have bombs exploding. But one of the things that I always find a little frustrating about that coverage is that it doesn't go back to these places months or years after they've occurred and see what the after effects of them are, how events of this magnitude really reverberate through people's lives. And so a really important part of this to me was being able to talk to the park staff about how it personally affected them, being able to talk to the volcanologists about what it was like standing there monitoring these lava flows, and then next to them there's people that they actually knew who were losing their houses. People talk to me about their post-traumatic stress. People got emotional. That was really important to me. And I think that it's the duty of, journalism to make space for that, to be able to come back and revisit these events after they've happened.
I'm so glad you said that. Nancy and I have been through, hurricanes and fires, earthquakes, and the last series of fires we went through. We were evacuated 7 times in a year and a half, full evacuations, and we lived in a little mountain town. And we were told we ended up evacuating from Southern California all the way to Tombstone, Arizona, and drinking Bloody Marys and Big Nose Kate Saloon. But anyway, we were told that our house had burned down and everybody in our neighborhood, had burned down, which turned out not to be true. And you go back, and there's this influx, and this from going through this yourself, Andy, that there's this influx of people that rubberneck come in. There's looters, and it was the aftermath of that last fire that took 2/3 of the homes down in our town, and that's why we ended up leaving and going and having to take the photos of my friends' homes all gone, and them standing there and having this kind of like, we'll move on, attitude and having to do it just for insurance purposes, what we were doing. But there was this interesting undercurrent, and then later there was the PTSD that stepped in, and I didn't realize I was feeling it because I didn't sleep forever because there was always a fire, and there was arsonists that were setting fires at the there's basically one highway that goes through the town, and so they would set it at the base of both sides of the mountain, and so everybody drove around with spades or shovels. It was just one of those times, and there was that feeling. So after the rubberneckers and the looky-loos, there's people who want to come back in to support as soon as it's ready, and there are amazing onslaught of just amazing individuals that are kind and are selfless, and doing it for the right reasons. And then there's this whole batch of everybody just forgets that happened, and that it takes this period of time to recover. And I'm going to say probably just emotionally it's going to take 2 to 3 years for some of the,
of course,
depending on
yeah, of course. I mean, these things tug at the fabric of communities, and that's really important to acknowledge and make space for.
Wow. And Tanya, you were there through all this going on, and you've gone through, Hawaii's been through some things over the last year and a half. I mean, at one point, you had that big siren going off going, okay, this is the end of the world as we know it. So, I mean, there's like, you're in paradise, but paradise has like a little price to it. And so how do you feel about what Andy is doing? Because when I say like diversity in location and also the medium of artists, and then what they're producing, this is completely different to what we've, covered on the show over the last few years.
It is. I mean, it's different. Andy is different in a number of ways, but one of the things that you touched on was, the historical aspect of something that we tend to forget. The media forgets. It's it's out of everybody's mind. Really an important part of what he is doing is keeping these stories alive. And even a year later, if it's not, it just is with everything. If we're not reminded all of the time about something, we forget just as a people. So Andy is making sure that everybody's stories are still heard. We still know. I mean, it's still going on. We're on a volcano. It's going to be going on forever. It's always going to be here in some way. And when Andy went and spoke to the people whose entire lives were turned around forever, he got it from all different sides. The parks, the National Park Service side, the people side, the individual stories. It's just important. It's really important to keep this fresh in people's minds, because it was only a year ago. We're still talking about Pompeii and Vesuvius, guys. So, we got to keep it in mind,
Yeah, and art has always told history. Art is like the best, history lesson. And that's what I like what you're doing, Nancy, and that's what we always talk about, how, visuals help teach science and history, and especially in a comic way, that's
But people are funny. I mean, something happens in a certain place, but you still go back. I think it's interesting when you think about it. Like where we were in California, it was known for wildfires, and we went through several of them, and then eventually finally went, wow, maybe we should look at living somewhere else. Is it just possibly?
Well, the reason we didn't leave for that reason, other than we get itchy feet after 2 years, and now we just don't.
That's true too. But I mean, people in general, they just kind of stick to what they know, whether it's bad or good. And I'm not saying every time something bad happens, everybody should up and leave. Not at all. But there is a certain amount of it's a possibility, but you get too comfy, and then even though it's happened before, when it happens again, it's like, oh man, that happened.
Yeah.
There was a really interesting perspective on that, actually, that I got from Harry Kimson, the mayor of the island, because he lost his house in this eruption in Vacation Land. This house that he'd owned since I think 1975 or something. He built it himself.
Wow!
This is one of the questions I really wanted to ask him. Was what's the personal effect that this had on you?
Yeah.
And honestly, he kind of brushed it off. He was like,
he's like,
I've been in charge of I've been in charge during every eruption event since since the 70s, basically, either as mayor or civil defense. And so he knew the risks. He was like, I bought this place. I knew the risks. It happened. It was really sad. He felt worse for the community around him, but he was like, I knew this could always be a possibility, and so he always planned on it. It was a really interesting perspective because I expected it to have affected him in this different way, and he rolled with it.
It becomes part of who you are. It's like if you love a place and you have your roots in there, it's kind of, it's like, oh, we made it through another hurricane. That's how Florida was. It was like, oh, run to the store. Oh, there's no water. We'll take vodka. And that's how you go through a hurricane. You have a hurricane party, and it becomes almost, I don't want to say a badge of honor at all, because so many people lose lives through, disasters.
They lose a lot.
And there's been a lot of things happening, and like the floods in Houston, and there's just been so much happening. And you still I think about Puerto Rico too, to this day. Like, what can we do? And that keeps getting forgotten about. You need to go to Puerto Rico next. Tanya, can you do another residency? Can you go to Puerto Rico? Come on, we need that.
Sure. Why not? We can put that on the international wait list.
Oh, well, hey, but it is American, kind of, right? But nobody's allowed to vote or whatever it works. But, but, it's these kinds of things. I think there's this thing we have as individuals that if this is, our home, this is our home. I know in fires, the fire is about to take your house down, and, to get the people out of the house, they want to still fight it. There's that same thing, too. It's an interesting thing. And I think people have that real attachment to a place that's who they are. That's part of their.
Sure. I mean, this is too in the flood zones, right? Where you have these places that keep flooding over and over again. They're trying all these incentive programs to get people to move, and a lot of people won't do it. They feel this attachment to the place. It seems worth it to them to take that risk.
Wow. So would you go back and do another residency? And if so, would it be back to Hawaii Volcanoes, or would you apply for another one?
I'd do anywhere. It's been a great experience. I mean, the ability to have this much freedom to talk to any people, the contacts I was afforded by being associated with the National Parks Arts Foundation. People would talk to me. People would return my calls. It was great. And I feel like I was able to pull out.
It's true.
Honestly. But no, it's been a wonderful experience. The question, of course, you got to figure out how to fit it into your life. But yeah, absolutely, in a heartbeat.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yay.
And I know you've traveled the world. So for any aspiring, comics artists now or journalists, because I love that part of it, what you're doing in all these different aspects, the memoir side and everything too. What would you say to them about getting started in this world in general? Because, the media industry has not been easy over the last 20 years. Just saying.
Much less the last 5 years. I mean, new media is its own special kind of hell. I don't know. There's no. An aspiring artist came up and asked me. I gave a talk in the park a couple days ago, sort of my artist talk that was giving a little preview of the piece and wrapping up my experience here. And a young woman came up and asked me for advice, the sort of career advice thing. And this is a question I get from my students a lot too. And honestly, it's a pretty hard one to answer because a lot of my own career seems like it's been random chance and happenstance. I put out a little zine, a mini comic, an editor comes across it by chance in a bookstore and calls me up with a book contract. Things. I think that the biggest piece of advice for any artist or journalist or basically anybody that's trying to make a career out of getting other people's eyeballs to look at their stuff is to just put stuff out there, right? I mean, you building up a walled garden around your own work and getting really precious about it doesn't do anybody any good. Learning how to finish things is a skill that's as important as any other craft. And so just finishing things that you start and then getting them out there, whether that's in print, online, whatever. And also when you do that, having a way for people who find it and think it's interesting to trace it back to you, which is also, a big struggle sometimes to convince young people to do, to attach their names to things, to put your email address on stuff. And then if, a fish bites, pull the line in to recognize what is an opportunity, because a lot of things really are just random chance, and having the will to jump on anything that comes your way and just wrestle it down is really important too.
You got to do the follow-up.
Taking advantage of opportunity, and just asking that question, that one thing, are you interested in this? Instead of waiting, or not asking ever because you're afraid or you don't want to face rejection sometimes. But consistency and just always going out there and asking. That's, I feel like it's really important, especially this day and age where people get so online and they text. I think it's so funny. Everybody has phones, but they don't talk anymore on the phone. They type on their phones. It's so weird.
But there's extra connectivity that actually comes with that in some ways. It's just another tool. But it's true, the follow-up, the consistency, and moving forward on rejection. When you have rejection, you've got to look at all the positives. You've always got to have that chart of don't count the rejections. Just never look at that, ever. It's like, don't. But, you should just have a journal of all the good stuff, because when the rejection comes, you go back to the journal and go, look at all these people, if all these people liked this or whatever it is, you got to look back at that. And Tanya, this is really actually part of the foundation of the National Parks Arts Foundation, is that when people, and this is, I really want to make this point, because when people apply and do their submission process, since they don't get in, you allow people to reapply. And some things in life, you only get to apply once, and that's that. You can't do it again. It's like you're only allowed to vote once. You're different in that, and it was creating these opportunities that weren't there. And so you allow people to reapply, which is cool.
Oh yeah. We do, and it hasn't been a problem at all. It's been great. In fact, we've been able to do invitation-only residencies because we've had people apply time and time again and get it again, and then we it's we're like, wait a second, you keep on being selected. So let's go ahead and create another residency or two more residencies or whatever, last minute, not taking anything away from them, not making the artists share quarters or anything, but just adding and working with. And that just happens naturally. A lot of the people who just keep applying, we see them. We see that they're really supporting themselves, and they see that they want to do this, and there's really something to be said for people like that. I can't say I'm that good a person, so we're like, wow, this person's better than me, so let's make sure you keep track of them.
That's really nice. I know, it's like, but so you've got so everyone, Hawaii, you got to go check that out now. So go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org for that. But I also saw the Dark Sky. Am I right? A Dark Sky for Death Valley.
Ooh. Yeah, Death Valley Dark Sky in November, and it's Dark Sky photographers. And so we're investing in this one, and we still only have three people have applied. It's so embarrassing to say. But this is the test. This is sort of the test to see if we can take it bigger, just for night sky photographers, and astronomers. But the thing is this was our opportunity to have it in November without it costing too much to be able to do. The problem is that November isn't the best time of the year for specific constellations. So if you want to get specific constellations, you know, they're not going to come till the spring. And we've gotten a lot of people interested that say, you know, we want to come, but we want to come in the spring or the summer when the specific constellation we like is up. And we're like, well, yeah, we can't do that because it'll cost, you know, $30,000 that we don't have. This is the test. This is the test to see if we want to do it across the country in many different national parks.
They should have a look at, find something new and different. Look at it from a different aspect. Don't go to
I like
my
that kind of challenge.
Constellation.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. You've
That's
already
the
seen
creative part of it. That's the creativity,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah. Come on, people.
See,
you already have
look
a
at
favorite. Go see something new.
Andy had to go to Photoshop because of a broken arm, you know, so there you go.
Yeah.
You have to take the weakness and make it into your strength, and that's the cool thing. Tanya, is that when Nancy and I are going to be there? I know that we're going to be there. I've been running around telling everybody we're going to be in Death Valley on Halloween and the Day of the Dead. Like, seriously.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, that's so
cool.
Isn't that cool?
We're going to find a way that don't even exist and put them up in the sky, and people will be like, man, look at that.
Okay, Nancy's going to get weird out in Death Valley. I already know. It's going to be a weird experience, you know. But this is so cool. You know how much fun it is to go follow in Tanya's footsteps on the tour. It just like all magically happened. But I want to go back before we close off. I want to go back to Santa Fe because the La Fonda Hotel, where Nancy and I had like an amazing time staying there, stayed at the Inn of Governors, also really cool history, and they serve you sherry at 4:00 with these New Mexico cookies that I can't pronounce. And I forgot how much I like sherry. But anyway, La Fonda is like the amazing art hotel. They have over 1,050 pieces of art in this hotel, and Tanya run amok in that hotel, but I want to know the David Bowie story. I know Nancy does. Andy, you want to hear the David Bowie story, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Bowie's the dude,
favorite
or the gal, depending on what he wanted to be at that day.
Well, the story isn't that exciting. So, boy, I don't know about this as a finale, you guys.
Okay.
My dad had his first store in the La Fonda, right on the corner there, and so I used to work there, you know, when I was like 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, on and on. So I was running through the halls of the La Fonda, but you might know this person named David Bowie in the early 70s. I think it was 73 it was filmed. I don't know. Came to film The Man Who Fell to Earth. And so came into my dad's store, and my Uncle Rick, who now owns the oldest house in the United States, which is also in Santa Fe. Beautiful artwork. First People's artwork there.
Yeah.
Oh, you probably met Rick. You probably met my uncle.
Cool.
And so my Uncle Rick, who's from the Midwest originally, from kind of ranching family, son of a pastor, hung out with David Bowie because they met at my dad's store, and they just hung out and talked about Native American pieces and things like that. That's the whole story. I wish I could say I was a baby and David Bowie picked me up and I was the original person who fell to earth, but it's not that big a deal. Not that big a deal. But I do like to picture my Uncle Rick, who is a portrait of just niceness, you know, preacher's son in the early 70s, opposite person of David Bowie, hanging out. Just why not? They're both interesting people, you know. I thought that was very cool.
I just want to see David Bowie coddling you and like rocking you, like rockabye baby, you know. You know, it's like Dave
running around this hotel.
I know, David Bowie lullaby, you know. But yeah, the Ortega. So wait a minute. So this is the thing too. So the Thunderbird Barn Grill that we went to is, you know, the Ortega family that you are of. It's fascinating because we've seen Ortega Drive and Gallup, and I'm like, Tanya has her own street, and you've got this is part of the trading post history of the Southwest. Your family is the trading post history, really a big part of that.
Yeah, on both sides. Wow.
Cool.
My mother grew up in Zuni, and that's where I was made. And my father grew up at different reservations and down in Tucson.
Oh, wow.
I was made in Zuni. I know exactly where I was made.
So you moved back close to our old hometown. I know.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said you got a little stamp on your backside that says "Made in Zuni."
Yeah, I do.
And David Bowie peeked and went, "What's Zuni? I'm going to write a song about it." Oh man.
Well, and when then we moved to I was born in Santa Fe, just down the street from the La Fonda, and that's when my father and mother started that store when my mother was barely 18. So
wow.
And I ran around the La Fonda and knew the owner when I was real little. I was like the Eloise of Santa Fe sort of thing, but not. I'd like to think not as spoiled. I was actually working very hard and getting paid in candy, as you do.
Did you have a little dog?
Yeah, did you have a little dog?
I did not have a little dog. Actually, you're right. I did have a little dog. Oh my God, I did have a little dog, a little golden retriever. That ended up being bigger than me, and its name was Jody, and it used to run away from home and run away to a gallery downtown on the plaza for no reason. It wasn't like the guy that owned the gallery dropped it at the pound or something. We did get it from the pound, but it would run away to downtown to one specific gallery, an art dog, I guess. I don't know.
Wow.
Santa Fe. Weird.
Wow. So everyone, you never.
Food.
I know, maybe feeding him, or you never know what you can hear on the show when Tanya comes on. But I love it because it was just so cool to be there. I'm like, we're in the presence of Tanya. She's here, and I love the plaza.
I'm blushing again.
Oh, it was really, really cool.
I love the plaza
really cool.
too.
Oh man, we were good girls to a point, but how well we behave. But Andy, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your story, and also going out and doing the work that you did, and getting people's stories and putting it out there in the world. And everyone, when you're listening to this, you'll be able to find it. So again, let me give you Andy's website is andywarnercomics.com. He's on Twitter at Andy Comics, and I'll make sure everything is linked up once it's published on the nib so you can see it. And also go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. And we were talking about Hawaii, the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. The website for the park is nps.gov/HAVO. I always walk around going, it's HAVO. But anyway, HAVO. So thank you. Thank you both for joining us. Of course, Tanya, we have to play Hawaii music for you now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aww, and thanks, guys.
Yeah, and listen.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Andy. Enjoy the rest of your little vacation time out in Hawaii, and also here's the song. It's called Slackmenco because this was my version of Hawaii meets Southwest. This is Makana. We would love to play his music. Makana is an amazing slacky guitarist, one of the top in the world, and you can keep up with him at makanamusic.com. Does a lot for Hawaii in recovery and recovery situations and all kinds of green issues and sometimes political issues too. Actually, Andy, I think you need to meet Makana while you're there. You'd get along really well.
So.
I know. I'm just saying. But here it is, Slackmenco. It's off of his album Ripe, and you can go to makanamusic.com. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.